Hey, beautiful people. So, seriously, I've been looking forward to making this for a long time. Now, this is gonna be my top 6 spots after tech, so that's really important. You need tech for these spots to be like good and therefore defense wise, not like, resource. Also, if this video hits 2k likes, I'll make another one where it's mid to early game, where it's resource based, you don't have tech and stuff like that. So if you want that, make sure to like the video. So there's gonna be a 5-star system. 1 star equals easy and 5 star equals hard. So yeah, let's get to the 6th spot, my 6th favorite one. Okay, so this is the surface entrance to radiation. It's really good because it's really hard to fob up on. You can't really like have a persistent fob because it's like every hour or so it's gonna delete everything. So it's pretty strong defense. It's the only one on the list that's not a cave. And I think the raiding difficulty here is pretty high. Building difficulty could be high because you need to do some tricks with the getting foundation support all over to make it like truly large instead of like mid-range like it originally is. I don't think it's really hard to defend either. You could set up a lot of like defense kind of structures and like towers, so you could easily defend this. You could use like reapers and dinos to like keep them away, and you could in general just keep it really safe. Also, the radiation entrance is hard to hit because I don't think there's a soaker that has radiation immunity, so they will take a lot of unnecessary damage from that side. And I think you could at least have 3 or 4 turret caps there if you really want to. So yeah, I kind of enjoy this spot. It's pretty good, like it's solid overall, and that's why I give it these kind of ratings. So this could be a really good spot if you're looking for aberration spot with like centralized. You could get batteries. It's actually pretty decent in terms of like getting batteries, metal, eggs from rock drakes, like all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's why it's number 6. Okay, so we're moving on to the next one. This is the first cave in the list. I think it's pretty decent because of the size. It's pretty big. I wouldn't say it's the biggest. There's bigger down the road, but I think it's really hard to like cheese this cave, and also it provides a lot of like flexibility when it comes to defending. So I kind of like this cave. I haven't really built in it myself, but I've seen several fairly big tribes building it fairly well. It has a lot of potential in terms of like breeding and defenses. It has entrance that's really hard to like get into. Honestly, I think this is one of the best spots on Valguero, if you exclude all of the weird spots up in the ceiling and stuff. So it has like a decent access to elements when it comes to the boss. So I think this spot is fairly strong in that regard. It does kind of have like a difficulty of building because you need to do like foundation support to properly build it, to have like layers to really take advantage of the spacing. So it's not like super easy to build, but it does make up for it in its total size, and also the fact that you can really defend it because it's not a crawl entrance, so you're not locked down to only using railgun in defense, which is the case for a few others in this list. So overall pretty good. If you have TPs all around, you could like get behind them, you could like fob up behind them. It is, however, a little bit easy to fob because there's so much size outside, and you kind of get locked inside, which is kind of the weak point of it. But yeah, there's always weak points. These are not, spaces where you cannot hit. It's more hard to hit spaces, so keeping that in mind. So here we have the answer to the most asked question on my channel. Where do you build? Like, this is my favorite spot on Aberration. It has a crouch, it has massive, or I don't know, massive, it's pretty large in size. It is, however, a little bit hard to build if you want to really like utilize the space, because there's a lot of like empty space, there's a lot of water, there's a lot of like unusable space, there's loads of teleporter blocking if you have collision on. But overall, I think it's a really good spot because it's aberration, so you have a limit of tames you could use. If you build a crouch proper, it's hard to seize. It's not impossible, but it's really hard. That's why this spot is most likely taken on almost every single official server. It's just that pure fact that it is really large. It is an aberration, so TPs to metal, you can make crafting stations. It just have all of the strength you want. It's really annoying to find. It's more annoying to scout, and you can even build so that scouting it and K-modding it is pretty much useless. So this spot is actually really hard to like properly prepare for, and I think there's just a few like very small amount of ways to raid it. This is also excluding the fact that you could spam the whole water entrance, which is not 6x by the way, it's actually normal damage, and you will make it take so long to get in to begin with. You can have turrets there, you could even make the inner part, the one I built on MTS, really hard to hit as like a loot or like, you know, blueprints area, whatever. Like, this spot is actually really versatile, and I kind of like that. You could use it as breeding, but I don't know how well or how good it is to breed on AB, to be honest, because of the limitations. You can't do gigas, you can't do flyers, all of that. But other than that, I would say this is one of the best ones, so yeah. The biggest flaw with this is that you can't really defend that well because you need tech railgun or something like that at the crouch area at least. The rest is kind of like not that easy to defend. You can't really like stop them in like normal ways, so yeah, that's like the big downside. So the next spot is actually kind of interesting because it's the most unique of the spot, I think. Like, you have one side is crouch, the other side is drop down. Now, people underestimate drop downs. It's so strong because you can't really like, you know, properly soak it because you have to drop down. You either die or you take a lot of damage from the drop. This spot is not very large, but it is a decent size. The biggest thing for this is actually that a majority of the cave is not 6 times. Almost all of it is just normal damage. There's just very small parts of it that actually has 6 times. So the inner part where you have your base, that has 6 times damage. The drop down does not have 6 times. I believe the crouch does have 6 times. The down area with the cave entrance, the big large cave entrance, does not have 6 times. So the biggest strength of this is honestly that you could push it out so far and make it massive in terms of like the outside defenses, as well as you have water entrance defense, which you could do a lot of like really nasty spam like vacuum and all that, and like hundreds of Tusos or whatever you want. So I would say this spot is actually really good, especially on unofficials that block artifact caves. This is amazing, especially with ORP, so yeah. I also kind of want to add that the biggest weakness of this base spots is honestly that you can fly in it. That's kind of the biggest weakness, but other than that, it is really hard to raid. Definitely worth a build. Now we are at the number 2, and there's good reasons. This is just a crazy spot to build. It's extremely hard to hit. You could do several turret caps. There's so much room. The only downside on the size is that it requires some finesse building. I wouldn't say it's like really hard, but it definitely does make it a tiny bit harder than some other on this list. It is probably the most popular, and it is almost definitely built on every single official that I know of. I've never seen this open ever. This is always built on official, and for good reason. It has water breeding, it has breeding in general, you have gigas, you have no limitations on breeding. So this spot is just overall amazing. It's really hard to hit. The only few ways I know of is not easy and really expensive to do. The bad side is that this is actually really hard to defend as well, because they can fob on your entrance, they can kind of lock you in, but you can kind of like limit that by having good TP placements if they do not grief them first, and then you're relying on tech rifles So this is why this is number 2. It's just impossible to ignore. It's such a Goliath of spots, you know? If you have a chance to build here, 100% you should take this. It's so strong, and you don't even need that good defenses early game. Alright, so we are number 1. Now this is here because it's massive in size, like beyond every single one so far. This is so much bigger. This, you could do whatever you need here. You can have massive breeding, you can have water breeding. It's fairly easy to defend. The downside is it requires a lot of defenses. The upside is no flyers. You could build it fairly hard to hit. The more you have, the better it is, and with a spot like this, I would start with the inner part. There's a drop down there. That drop down is really good and really easy to defend in terms of turrets. It is not that hard to defend in general, and it's not hard to build in general. There's obviously like some complex parts, but that's building in general, not this spot building, if you know what I mean. So I would say this is probably the best spot, and I don't think you'll find it on any server open unless you're first. And there's so many choke points in this cave, it's actually kind of crazy. You have the water part when you come up, there's a huge choke area you can make a massive turret defenses on. There is the entrance you could do a decent choke point on. You could do the drop down part and then have a choke point there. The inner part is massive in itself, so even if they don't get the last part but they get all the way there, you still have an insane amount of space. So I don't know, like this spot is just beyond every other spot in every kind of way. The only weakness it has, it is hitting this is mostly about time consuming and not as much about really difficult. Like the further out you go, the weaker it is. So at the beginning it's fairly weak, the entrance, and as you walk in it becomes harder and harder, and then the inner part with the drop down, that's like the apex of difficulty of this raid. So it is really hard to hit overall, but like segments of it is not that hard, so you have to keep that in mind. Do not keep your like super valuables far out. In general, I think this just sums up the list. Like this thing here is just so strong, so I don't even have the words to properly describe it. Now, while the rest of this is being shown in the background, I just wanted to say this is the first time I try this. If you think this was good, please leave a like, and I might do more, because I think it's kind of fun. It's just kind of weird for me. Other than that, if you made it all the way here, you must be amazing. Alright, bye!